So it's been a minute since I've been here. So I wanted to come back and tell you what's going on and maybe do a relaunch. If you followed my YouTube channel for a while, you'll know that most of what I used to do was analog planning, plan with me videos and things for my bullet journal, which I still do. But towards the end of what I was creating on YouTube, there were some videos on creating a small wardrobe and minimalism. And in the maybe year or so since I created those, a lot's changed. But if you're here because you follow me on Instagram and you want to check this out, I'm going to get a little bit vulnerable for a few minutes and explain where I've been, what I'm doing, and a big challenge that's going on this year. So if you're interested in that, stay here, keep watching. Okay, so if you popped over here from Instagram and you're new to following me there, I'm going to explain a little bit about what 20 and 2020 is and how I got here. And if you've been following me on YouTube and you're not following me on Instagram, I'm going to give you a second to click on over and go follow me on Instagram and do a little scrolling and digging around and see what I'm talking about. Basically, last year, at the beginning of the year, I created a challenge for myself. I was going to build my dream, sustainable, well-curated small wardrobe. And I set a goal and a budget, and I started shopping. I looked to Instagram for inspiration. When I was searching sustainable brands, there weren't a lot of bodies that looked like mine. I'm not a size 2 in sustainable fashion, and there weren't a lot of brands that offered sizes in sustainable fashion for someone like me. I found a great community on Instagram, and I really thoroughly enjoyed it, and I was highly inspired. And so I made my first few purchases, and every few purchases or so something new would come along and I'd say, oh, that's the thing I need. That's going to make this perfect. And I quickly realized that not only did I surpass my budget, but I surpassed probably the total number of pieces I needed, and I had very quickly swapped shopping fast fashion for shopping sustainable fashion, but in the same cycle of purchasing, purging, and repurchasing, and always looking for something new. That wasn't what I wanted to do at the beginning of last year. I, at that time, was using Instagram kind of as a visual diary of my outfits. And while I liked a lot of what I was wearing, I realized that I didn't like it long term, and sometimes it just didn't feel like me. But through that community, I found something called the 10 by 10 challenge, which was amazing. And basically, if you've never done 10 by 10, what it is you choose 10 items of clothing, and you mix those pieces for 10 days to make outfits. I did a couple of those challenges, and I really enjoyed them. And by the time the end of the year came, I had kind of an epiphany, and it was the structure of the 10 by 10 was exactly what I liked and exactly what I needed, and having that smaller selection of items to choose from just made my life easier. It just worked better for me. So all throughout the year, I had been kind of fantasizing about doing quote-unquote a personal uniform, and if you don't know what that is, it's for a lot of people it's a formula of clothing that you always use, maybe black pants, a white shirt, and a cardigan or a jacket. But a personal uniform can also be these same items of clothing that you wear day in and day out. At the end of 2019, I was transitioning a part of my life, and I had entered into a 10 by 10, and I realized 3 days in that I didn't even want to do that anymore. I basically wanted to do a personal uniform. And by personal uniform, I mean pretty much wearing the same thing every day. And that's what I did. I sold 90% of my wardrobe, aside from these 47 pieces of clothing that you see behind me. I chose a uniform that fit my lifestyle and I moved to wearing pretty close to the same thing every day. Sometimes I style it differently. I add third pieces to like make the look different. And while I was having that epiphany, I realized that while Instagram was a wonderful source of inspiration for me, it also was my downfall in some ways. I was very heavily influenced to continue the same cycle of purchasing in sustainable fashion as I did with fast fashion, and I don't think it gets talked about enough. I don't think we talk enough about what influencer culture does and how people can become vulnerable to it and the damage that it can, the toll that it can take, the damage that it can take. So if you follow me on Instagram and you go through my highlights for Personal Uniform, I talk a little bit about why I made that shift. And some of it was because I didn't have the best relationship with purchasing. It started with fast fashion, but it didn't change when I went to sustainable fashion. Those same negative attitudes about myself, those same insecurities, they were there. And those things, I didn't do any work on those. And the things that I needed to fix wasn't just switching to buying more sustainable clothing. There were bigger issues at play that needed to be worked on. So my whole point in going to a Personal Uniform was to remove all of the outside physical clutter and force me to focus less on the clothes and more on the issues that caused me to purchase the way that I did, especially around fashion. So if this is something that resonates with you or even intrigues you a little bit, I'm really, really going to invite you, if you didn't do the first time I said it, to go now and follow me on Instagram. I think you're going to really enjoy this challenge. So here's what I'm talking about. This year for 2020, I'm doing something called 20 in 2020. It started as just a little thing that I kicked around, but all of a sudden when I started talking to people about it, they were like, yeah, I want to do that. Yes, it makes sense. The whole premise of the challenge is not purchasing more than 20 items of clothing in all of 2020. So for me, several months ago, I did a huge closet purge. I moved to a uniform and I curated what I really love to wear. And I didn't want the year to come in and September to fall and it's fashion open season and I compromise what my true goal was in doing that. And I wanted to use the time to focus more on fixing the root of the issue. So again, what 20 in 2020 is purchasing a commitment to purchase no more than 20 items for your wardrobe in 2020. I have built, there's a whole community around it on Instagram. I've built in other support networks, a Slack group. What you can expect to see is I'm going to show you some of my purchases. Everyone's going to show their purchases if that's how they choose to participate. We'll talk about the challenges and the struggles and how we decide what's worth one of those 20 slots. We're going to talk about brands and why we back them, what we love. You can expect outfit of the day photos because for me that's something that always really was inspirational. Styling videos, what people purchase, how they style them. It's really fun. It's a super supportive network and there's a lot of positivity. I just wanted to come in and explain where I came from and how I got to that and then where I'm going. So there'll be content, tons of content on YouTube around it and more in-depth content here there's going to be tons of content on Instagram around it. Outfit of the day photos, styling videos. Some of those will carry over to YouTube. You can expect more in-depth content here on YouTube around it as well. One-on-one chats like this, accountability check-ins on Instagram. So I really, really, really am going to recommend that you go follow me at Dressing Dawn on Instagram. You keep following me here, and we keep building this sense of community, because like I keep saying with 20 and 2020, we are far better together. And I think that we can make some really positive changes if we have each other as a foundation and a support system. So that's where I'm coming from, and that's where I'm headed, and I hope you'll stick around and go with me.